Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
This is the podcast about monsters of the human and furry variety, or scaly, or whatever. True crime, ghostesses, cryptids, all that good stuff. Aliens.
Yes.
Yes. So, if you want to hear about those things, then you tune into us.
Yep. Or if you just want to be amused. Because we are nothing if not amusing.
At least we amuse ourselves.
And a select group of others.
That's right. You want to introduce yourself?
I shall. My name is MB Partlow. I am a writer. I am a retail worker. I'm a mom. I'm a pain in the ass. And
to a select group of people.
To a select group of people, once again. And I am still not a cryptozoologist.
And I am Shannon Lawrence, horror author, mother, student, amateur cryptozoologist. There we go.
I had to look that up, too.
That's the quickest I think we got through the intros ever.
It is.
All right. What have you been doing this week?
What have I been doing? It was busy. And I'm like, and when the hell is this going to air? This is going to be on at the beginning of March.
Yay.
Yes, what a surprise. We're not recording it the day that you hear it. This is probably the only thing that either one of us executes
in any way organizational in advance.
I have been... Okay, so there's a TV show that a friend recommended to me. Mm-hmm. And this person said, it was Kevin, he said, oh, I got to be home by 7 to watch my show. And I went, because he doesn't watch TV. He watches TV like Joe does. Never.
Ah.
If there's something in particular he wants to see, but, just not a big TV person. So I was like, what is your show? And he says, it's Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist.
I've heard of that.
Okay, so there's big musical numbers in every episode, song and dance. So he showed me a clip of the episode that was going to be on that night. And I watched that. I said, well, I'll go home and I'll check it out. So I went, and that was season 2. It was like the first or second episode of season 2.
Okay.
So I went back to the beginning of season 1 and I watched, I think, the first 2 episodes. And I will say, it is a very amusing show. There's a lot to it. It's really well done. It pushed all of my buttons in the wrong way.
Oh.
And it wasn't anything about the show. It wasn't that they were doing stuff wrong, although there were a couple of things. But the dad in the first season, her dad is ill, and he is sort of, I believe it's intimated that it's MS, but I don't think they've ever said that it's MS, but he's just kind of sitting there, and he can't feed himself, and he can't walk, and he can't talk. And it just hit me at the wrong time when I was thinking about people who are no longer with us. And
oh yeah,
I just went, I think I might be able to watch season 2, but I can't watch season 1. It was just...
Is he not in season 2 anymore?
Spoiler alert.
Uh-oh.
No, he dies at the end of season 1, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to watch that either.
That was...
it feels a little close to home.
Right?
Yeah.
I thought I would warn you. It looks like it's really well done. And I love the sassy neighbor. So I'm like, yeah, I'll watch season 2. It just started. Okay. So I'm not trying to take anything away from the series. It is beautifully done. The dance numbers are amazing.
Trigger warning, though.
Trigger warning if you've lost anyone or watched anyone go through a lengthy, debilitating disease. This might not be the thing.
I watched, and see, now I don't remember. I watched something that just set that off recently and was like, well, this wasn't great.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
So what have you been watching?
I watched the Night Stalker docuseries.
Oh, how was
Richard Ramirez. It was good. So it's a story I'm familiar with, but it was kind of cool. So I've always loved how he was caught. And I'm sorry, this isn't a spoiler. This happened way back when. But he was caught by people in a neighborhood who beat the living crap out of him, and the cops actually had to rescue him, basically. Well, the cop that was first on the scene had to put him in his car to save him from the people. And I've always loved this. So it's the best way a serial killer has been caught, I feel like.
I like that.
Just because it was the people of, what was it, LA or I don't remember. It's a California town, and they were just like, But it was interesting to finally, I mean, I've read about him. So they're saying he ran to this street and blah, 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 blah. It didn't mean anything to me. But on this, they had like a map and they were showing here's he was on the bus until here. So yeah, it was good. There's something about the fact that he had to be scared and he was hunted and he was running from people. Because
he should be scared and he should be hunted.
Absolutely. Although it was funny because afterwards he made this cocky comment and he was like, and they played his voice from an interview and it was along the lines of, oh, well, they wouldn't have been so big if I'd had a gun and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, gee, and you weren't so big when you didn't have a weapon and weren't waking somebody up in the middle of the night, you rat bastard piece of shit. So, anyway, incredibly satisfying. It was insane to see him in the courtroom flirting with all of the women. They would dress in black. They were fascinated by him. They thought he was sexy. And they would come to the courthouse. I think he married. He ended up being one of the ones who got married to one of his fans while he was in prison. But he's in there. So there's this, he would come in sunglasses. They let him wear sunglasses in court. And you see, there's footage of when he turns and he looks over his shoulder and he does this little wave at the women. And I was like, wow. Wow.
Why were they lined up for him?
Same reason they were for Charles Manson and Ted Bundy. And I don't know. Somebody posted in the comments, look up the halo effect and you'll see why people fall for
I once dated someone who bore a slight resemblance to Charles Manson.
With or without the crazy eyes?
Mostly without. Except he was like 2 or 3 times the size of Charles Manson. Because Charles Manson was very slight. Mm-hmm. He wasn't very tall. And this guy was, 6'2". So it was like Big Charles Manson.
Big Charles.
We called him Big Charlie. No, we didn't. It was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
I worked with 2 Richards at one job, and one of them was Big Dick and one was Little Dick. They didn't like that. But otherwise, it was Big Richard and Little Richard. And I was like, do you want to be Little Richard or Little Dick? Which one? Pick one.
They could have opted for Rick.
Ugh, neither of them went by Rick.
Well, I know, but I would be like, call me by my last name. Call me Skippy. Call me
anything but Rich.
Rich could have worked.
Call me Rooster. I don't care.
Yes. Yes.
So what did you read this week?
I read good things and I wrote them down.
Nice.
I am so pleased with myself. I read the latest book by Jonathan Mayberry. It's called Ink. And I do have to say, I think it is one of the scariest books I've ever read.
Rock on.
And it's on several different levels because there's a factor in the book about the villain stealing other people's memories. And how that affects people. Mm-hmm. And you get to, you kind of see it from a distance. Like, he took someone's memories and they ended up killing themselves because the memories that he took were very important. Of course, because you don't need to take the memory of
going to get ice cream.
Yeah, getting the paper in the morning. So there was that. You are your memories. I mean, your memories make you the person you are. But then there were some very vivid... There's a lot about flies, which creeped me out.
Okay.
So it was so there were all these different levels that it was scary on, and it was just super well done. Highly recommend. 10 out of 10.
Awesome. I think it's funny that you read the scariest horror story ever, and I read a memoir.
What memoir did you read?
Lucky Man by Michael J. Fox. I think it's either his earliest or one of his earliest ones, because he has, I think, 3 memoirs. And by the way, he wrote it himself. Now. It's not ghostwritten. Oh yeah, it might be 4. Anyway, it was good. It was about the diagnosis and the journey to the diagnosis and what was happening in the meantime. And I was surprised to learn how early, now I want to go back and watch certain movies see what I can see. He woke up. What was he filming? Oh, it was with Woody Harrelson. So it was Doc Hollywood.
Oh, I forgot Woody Harrelson.
And he woke up one morning and he thought there was a moth on his face. And it was actually his pinky finger twitching just nonstop, and it wouldn't stop.
Hadn't he been out? Didn't he think at first it was a hangover?
Yes.
I remember
he absolutely did.
That.
He'd been partying, and he said when it kept happening, he thought maybe because he and Woody Harrelson would get into like big fake fights and slap fights and stuff, and they would sometimes like throw over the furniture and do this whole big dramatic thing when they were drunk, and he thought maybe he'd done that.
Right.
But of course it kept going, and he would like try and hold it, and he was looking at it, and then, you know, it reminded me, there's connections between Parkinson's and ALS. Mm-hmm. And it's like my dad, his diagnosis of ALS started with drop foot or something, I think it's called, yes. Where his foot was just limp.
Yep.
And he was actually scheduled for a surgery on his spine because they thought it was like a nerve thing.
Oh.
When he got another opinion, and that's when he was diagnosed with ALS. So he would have had this spinal surgery. Yes.
Oh, God.
So it's just, they start so little that it takes so long to get a diagnosis with these.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a process. Part of the diagnosis is a process of elimination. You eliminate everything else.
Yeah. ALS is very much about that too. And yeah, and he was so young, Michael J. Fox, when it was called Young Onset Parkinson's. So anyway, it was a good book. He talked about being a kid, and I just imagine, like, he was the 4th child out of 5, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
Youngest boy. He had a sister after him, and he was teeny then. He was so teeny that his younger sister, who was several years younger than him, for a while they thought they were twins, and then she outgrew him.
Oh, wow.
So, because he was just so tiny.
How tall is he? Is he 5'6"?
5'5"?
5'5".
I think, because at the end of the book he says, I feel 5'5" when he got his second Emmy for something. And the first time he got it, he said, I feel 4 feet tall. And then when he got his second one, he said, I feel 5'5". So I think that's his height.
Well, yeah. Wow.
Anyway, you read other books. I just thought it was funny because you were like, it's the scariest horse for air. I'm like, I read a book about Michael J. Fox.
The other thing is, it's not super gory. It's not, there's a lot of
mental.
There's a lot of mental, and there's a lot of beautiful detail layered in. And also, it goes back to Pine Deep.
Okay.
Did you read any of the...
I read the first one.
Okay. So it goes back to Pine Deep, although it's many years later.
Okay.
So I also discovered, thanks to my sister-in-law, a new author. So I read A Litter of Bones by J.D. Kirk. And it's set in the Scottish Highlands. And after reading about a page, I was like, I need to put trip to Scottish Highlands on my list of things to do immediately.
My husband thinks so. He's been a few places for work that I haven't been, like lots of them. And he thinks I would like Scotland better than England. And I believe he is correct.
That is possible. That is possible. I thought Scotland was delightful when we were there. But anyway, so this is set in Scotland. And one of the things I really liked, and it's a police procedural, what I really liked was that the characters all seemed very real. And they weren't, you know, sometimes you read a mystery and the main character is super damaged.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, nah. I mean, they had your regular, I mean, everybody has their shit. Everybody has stuff going on. And these people all they were very realistic and very well-rounded. And I really liked the dialogue between characters because it wasn't just snark, snark, snark. I mean, you know, you had the guy who thought he was cool with the women and nobody else did. He thought he was, but he was the only one who thought that. But and it had a couple of good twists that I didn't see coming. But they weren't, again... It wasn't the kind of twist that flips the entire world on its ear. It was a good, ooh, it was a hard left, a zigzag.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds like one that if I could just bear to listen to a book on tape, I would like to listen to on tape with all the Scottish.
Oh, yeah.
However, it's interesting because you've read all the Highlander books, but it was this book that made you want to go to the Scottish Highlands.
Yes.
Interesting.
Probably because he's just, the character's describing it today.
Okay.
I mean, it's modern, it's current, so
it's not like I would like to go be on the killing fields and whatever that place is.
Yeah, Culloden and no, I don't want to go there. And I finally finished The Chef's Secret by Crystal King, which is an historical mystery. It was set in, I looked it up because I kept going. It was way back when popes could marry. And everybody looks at me and just kind of nods.
Yeah.
Like, we know what you're talking about. It was set in Renaissance Italy in 1577.
Oh. But it took you a while to read.
It took me and you know me, I'm a pretty voracious reader. The aspect of the book I did not like was that when someone died, the person who killed them, they didn't die. When someone was murdered, the person who killed them didn't seem to feel any remorse. I mean, they were like, ooh, how are we going to get away with this? How are we going to cover this up? How am I going to protect my girlfriend or whatever? But I'm like, there was no remorse for having taken a human life just to make your own life better or easier. And that really bugged me. It was a well done period piece. There's lots of sex and intrigue and murder and lots of murder.
Well, fun. I'm in.
So if you like a period mystery, it was really well done.
With as little reading time as I get now, though, that sounds like probably not. Yeah. Since I couldn't remember any movies that I watched this week, so nothing stood out to me, I did want to talk about, I started listening to a new podcast. I'd heard about it several months ago somewhere, and I was like, ooh, they have a podcast? And then I totally forgot about it.
Okay, what's
and then it
called?
Popped up. It's called Smart Less. 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 It's Jason Bateman.
Oh my God.
Will Arnett and Sean Hayes.
Jason Bateman. I'm writing this down.
It's
Will Arnett.
So fun. They're funny. So each time one of them brings a surprise guest on. So it's a surprise to the other two. So they've had, so far I've listened to, Seth Rogen was on one. Dax Shepard was on one. Melissa McCarthy. Yeah, it was on one. And then, the big astrophysicist.
Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yes, he was on it.
Wow.
Yes. And oh my gosh, the nerd came out strong in those guys. It was fantastic. Even Sean Hayes was such a nerd. Yes. It was fun to listen to. So I've been enjoying it for a little humor. And so first of all, I love both Sean Hayes and Jason Bateman. Yes. I've loved Jason Bateman in many different ways through the years. He's one of my nerd crushes, like Jeff Goldblum, he's a hot nerd. Yes. And I just love the way he talks, because that intonation that he always has is in that podcast. Ooh. So it's been so fun. I listen to it in between my true crime podcasts. Or if I ended up finding it because one of my true crime podcasts had this guest podcast on, and I'm not going to say what it was because I'm sure they're fabulous. I just wasn't in a good place. I had a really bad migraine, and they were very hyper. Oh. Yeah. And it was... The podcast I listened to is 2 people, and then they had these additional 2 people. So there were 4 people, and 2 of them were the very loud talk over each other type. And I just couldn't, my brain just, was terrible. So I went and started looking, and the Smart Less, I had followed it when I heard about it, but had never listened to it. So I'd gone and clicked follow on Spotify. So I started listening to it, and I was like, yay! And since I'm talking podcasts, I'm giving a shout out to some friends who have podcasts. If you like author interviews, if you like nerddom, fantasy, sci-fi, and of course horror, because they've each had me on as a guest talking about horror. So all spec fic. It's Functional Nerds.
Can't say enough good about Functional Nerds.
Are you still on their Patreon?
I am.
Yeah. So you get to I know for a while they were doing it where you could tune in and watch was it video of them doing it?
Yes, and I did do that, but now they have a special meeting. They have a Zoom meeting once a month, and for patrons, and to just hang out and talk. And cool. I haven't been able to make one yet because it's either been scheduled when I'm at work or when I'm here.
Oh, yeah. They record on a Sunday too.
But Functional Nerds is Patrick Hester and Tracy Townsend.
Nice.
Has joined him.
That's right. And she's newer. She's just new this
last few months, I think. Yes, because the old partner who did it with him had life circumstances that necessitated more attention. Part of which I believe was a new bambino.
That'll do it.
That sucks up a lot of your time when you bring one of those home.
So nice to be past that time.
Yes.
Never happening. And then the other one is the Beyond the Trope folks who are up in Denver, and they're a ton. Just, it's fun to listen to. That one's a bigger podcast, more hosts, but they also talk to authors, and I think they talk to people beyond authors in that too. But we always met them because they were always at the cons, you know, getting there to interview people at the various conventions. They were always at Denver Comic Con, whatever it's called now.
And Mile High Con.
Yep.
Just tons of fun to hang out with.
Oh, yeah.
And they went to WorldCon the year we did.
That's right. As did Patrick Hester.
Yes.
So, anyway, I just wanted to throw out some podcasts if anybody likes author interview type podcasts, so they can listen to that. So, do you have anything else?
No, go ahead, jump in, and then I will.
Okay, we are super excited today because we got our first email from a listener. So this is from Kim, and the title of this is UFOs Over Our House in the Middle of Our Street. We live about 8 miles from the Colorado Springs Airport and about 4.5 miles from Peterson Air Force Base. I have come to understand our proximity to the two airfields is of interest because there seems to be a lot of UFO sightings near airports and air bases. We've lived in a flight path of both airfields for nearly 25 years. In that time, we've witnessed all manner of aircraft from our own yard. From private jets and the police helicopters to stealth bombers, the V-22 Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft, and gigantic DC-10 tanker planes, to stuff further off like meteorites and satellites. We've pretty much seen it all. It's a normal thing for us to periodically look up just to see what we can see. Even the dog watches the skies. And it says, even the dog. My husband was out on the front deck smoking his nightly stogie and enjoying the warm summer evening as some men are wont to do. Suddenly he came running into the house shouting, "You gotta see this!" As he rushed through the house and out the back door, I of course rushed after him out the back door and looked up to see what he was frowning at, which was an area directly above our house. There was nothing there. My husband, a staunch conservative with an I don't believe it unless I see it kind of attitude, was crushed and genuinely a little shaken. What he told me next was weird and somewhat chilling. He described what I knew, and he didn't at the time, was the classic triangular UFO flying very low over our neighborhood, then hovering for a moment over our house with absolutely no noise at all. The craft then began to proceed south at a pace that seemed too slow for any aircraft to stay aloft, heading toward the backyard. In the mere seconds it took him to get from the front of the house to the back where I joined him, the craft had vanished. He reported the sighting, but we never heard anything back. This was not the first UFO we've witnessed in the area. However, it was the first that hovered over our house, which is in the middle of a neighborhood, in the middle of an established part of the city. That felt kind of personal in a really creepy sort of way. We never saw the triangle again, but we have seen several other UFOs, including strange lights and orbs and strange lights. I might add, have been witnessed by people outside our immediate family as well, and visitors have from time to time mentioned an intense feeling of being watched while staying with us. All in a normal tri-level in a normal neighborhood in an urban setting. I'm not saying aliens are flying over my house and watching us. I'm rather a skeptic myself, but if you live near the airfields in Colorado Springs, keep looking up. You never know, you might see something interesting and mysterious, even in the middle of the city.
Cool.
Hey, Kim, when you get kidnapped, I need you to tell us kidnapped by the aliens and taken on their ship. We need to hear about it.
Tell them you need a phone because we will need to interview you while you're there, preferably. And I know
live.
I have been to her house, and it's in an established neighborhood. It's in the middle of the city. It's not way out in the middle of nowhere.
That was fun, and thank you, Kim, for writing into us. It was so awesome. You've just made our whole year.
You did. You really did. It's like, fuck, January. We just won 2021.
Yay! Here's hoping. All right.
That's how low our expectations have been set by last year. So would you like to begin, or would you like me to begin this time?
It doesn't matter.
I don't
You
care.
look comfortable. I guess I'll start. We both have some crazy stuff, I think.
We're both going to apologize in advance because we're going to be butchering some pronunciations.
Yes. So hers will be Indian and mine will be Japanese, yeah? So, yeah. Oh, and speaking of disclaimers...
Oh, we forgot.
Too little, too late. Okay. So, disclaimer.
God damn it.
We really do. I just need a checklist up on the wall.
Yes.
There may be language. I believe there already has been. Whoops. Yeah, not safe for work, not safe for little ears. Apologies. But also the disclaimer that, yes, I'm certain that I am not going to pronounce a lot of these Japanese names correctly. So I am doing the Japanese Twitter killer, which was recently in the news. And my sources were NPR, The Guardian, news.com.au, and Insider. Okay. I actually remembered to do my sources first. Did you see that?
Yay.
Did you see it? Did you see
it?
it?
I heard it. I watched.
I functioned good this week.
You are highly functioning today.
I know. You got here. I'd already had my breakfast for once instead of sitting here drinking it while we're...
Yeah, she has Bloody Marys every time I'm here.
I do. That's funny though, because we were watching something yesterday and somebody had a Bloody Mary in the morning. They're sitting there in their robe and Jeff's like, do people really drink those in the morning? And I'm like, honey, that's when people drink those.
Yes.
Yes. When I waitressed at a diner called Gunther Tootie's, they had screwdrivers or whatever.
And
mimosas. I don't think we did mimosa. I don't think we had champagne there.
But probably screwdrivers
Bloody
and
Marys.
Bloody Marys because it's got juice, so therefore it must be healthy.
Right. It's a healthy breakfast. No. I couldn't.
Even if you put in some protein powder.
Right. Okay, then I might be able to. On October 21st, 2017, a 23-year-old Tokyo woman named Aiko Tamura went to a stranger's house and never came home. She had posted on Twitter that she wanted to commit suicide, and she'd been answered by a man calling himself Hangman or the Hanging Pro. He said he could help her die, and she accepted. Her brother, while trying to discover what had happened to his sister, found their conversation in their DMs and led police to a man who would come to be known as the Twitter killer. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. The brother and a female friend of his contacted the killer via Twitter, setting up a fake appointment in order to get his address and pass it to the police. I think that's
pretty clever.
Smart. When police entered his home in Zama, a city in Kanagawa Prefecture in southwest Tokyo, and asked where Tamura was, he told them without hesitation that she was in the freezer. He didn't even try and hide that shit. He was like, oh yeah, she's in the freezer.
Wow.
Yep.
Either she was little or he had a big freezer.
Well, parts of her were in the freezer anyway. Japan, known for having a low murder rate but a high suicide rate, was already reeling from the ongoing court case involving a 70-year-old black widow named Chisako Kakehi. And it's funny because they're reeling because over the last 10 years there have been 3 murders,
Oh, God.
But we're talking 2 serial killers in a row for them. Her still being tried in court. And now this guy comes along, and this is just very unusual for Japan. Right. This new crime was committed by a 27-year-old man named Takahiro Shiraishi. He had only lived in this home for 2 months, August to October of 2017. His parents having urged him to get out of their home after a conviction for scouting women to lure them into the sex industry in Kabukicho Red Light District in Tokyo. He was given a suspended sentence in early 2017, and then his dad actively found him a place to move. His dad found the place for him to move. He was like, out.
Yeah, I could. That's a reason you'd want your kid to move out.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd want to get him some therapy. I
guess not.
Okay.
Police found coolers and large toolboxes around the house, and upon opening them, they found body parts covered in kitty litter to absorb the smell and liquids. The parts would eventually be traced to 8 victims other than Tamura's.
8?
In a 2-month period.
Holy
just as a reminder.
Shit.
Yeah. With police using items belonging to the victims that Shiraishi had kept, including credit cards and IDs. So he had been using their money to live. There were 2 heads and an array of 240 body parts total for them to go through, many of them with the flesh having been scraped off. Neighbors stated that a smell of rot had come from the house, but they hadn't reported it to police. Police and the media took to calling it a house of horrors.
Yeah.
As they identified the victims, they found that 3 had been high school students, with the youngest being 15 years old. The oldest victim was 26. All were women except for 1 man, and he was a boyfriend who had tracked Shiraishi down, but he went there directly instead of calling the police.
Ah.
So okay. It must have been the same sort of situation where he found it in her direct messages. On his Twitter profile, Shiraishi had written, "I want to help people who are really in pain. Please DM me anytime." His profile picture was a manga image of a man with a noose around his neck. And it said something about, and cuts on his wrists and neck or something like that. Nothing had the picture. After going through psychological testing and found able to stand trial, Shiraishi was indicted in 2018. He never denied his crimes, openly stating that he lured the women to his home after finding them on Twitter and in a group for those wanting to make suicide pacts. With some of his victims, he promised to die with them, so he made pacts with them, never intending to do so. Others, he offered a choice between being hanged while watching television or being otherwise distracted, or in being drugged and hanged afterward, as stated by an almost victim who said she talked to him on the phone, making arrangements, because she wanted to die, but heard a woman groaning in the background and decided not to go through with their meeting. So I'm like, what? Did he take a phone call in the middle of... What the hell? It has been stated that he sexually assaulted at least some of the female victims before killing them. While in the stand, he openly admitted to having done the killings to satisfy sexual urges. After drugging them, he would strangle them until they passed out, then hang them until they died. It had not been said when the sexual assaults occurred, but it would stand to reason it was after they passed out, as no article said the sexual assault occurred after their deaths.
Okay.
This being a newer story, with him just having been convicted, that you can't find as much information as when I go back and look for a serial killer in the 70s. After they were dead, he would dismember them and get rid of whatever he could in his garbage. Police found the saw he used to cut them up. Despite his lawyers trying to get him off on the higher charges of murder by stating that his victims wanted to die, Shiraishi was quick to state that he never got permission and that they did not want to die. In fact, he found that they only wanted to talk when they got to his house.
Oh, that is so sad.
At no point was he willing to accept lesser charges for what he'd done. He also said he was tired of being turned down by women, that this was one way to remedy that. He didn't want to go out and try and meet women. He didn't like being turned down. I'm surprised he didn't write a manifesto. Hundreds of people were queued to attend the court case, but only 16 seats were available in the public gallery. I think it was like 453 at the writing of that article, which was before the actual trial.
Wow.
And the same thing had happened with the Black Widow. In October 2020, he pled guilty to the murder and dismembering of the 9 victims. And in December 2020, he was found guilty and sentenced to death, which will be by hanging, because that's how they carry out the death sentence in Japan. There, they do not publicly state the date of the hanging. They don't tell the person being hanged until the morning of. Today you die.
Wow.
So apparently they've been under pressure from global pressure to, 1, get rid of the death penalty, and 2, it's felt that it's inhumane to not tell them ahead of time when they're going to die or their families or whatever. So,
I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't either. I feel that Japan's just like, whatever. We really don't care if you don't like it.
Yeah.
They do have a low crime rate. His crimes also caused Twitter to make rules about discussing promoting suicide in any way and encouraging it, and because people were openly talking about it before. Considering he killed these 9 people in a 2-month time period, he could have racked up a significant body count had he kept going, had that brother not tracked him down. I mean, he was just getting started. Absolutely.
Oh,
and
wow.
There's going to be no shortage in a place where the suicide rate is so high. There would have been no shortage of victims. He could have just kept milling them out.
Wow.
I was sitting there, I was like, I can't imagine if he did that in 2 months. There's some so famous serial killers that don't have that high a body count. Yeah. But they make for an interesting story. Or they've caught people's imagination for some reason. Yes. You know, but yeah. It's just crazy.
Wow. I'm just like, that is... He was busy. Did he not have a job?
I don't know. It didn't say. I mean, he had to be living there somehow unless his parents were paying for it.
You're so repulsive. We will pay you to live somewhere else.
Well, and think about it. In Japan, family, I think, lives together for a long time. Your elders live with you.
And housing is at it's an island. Housing is at a premium, and you don't have... That's why I was surprised when you said the body was in the freezer, because they don't have a lot of space in an individual apartment or home or whatever. It's not... Oh, wow. All right, then. Moving right along.
All right. This is funny, because so we both have found this woman and considered doing her on... It was either our last podcast or like 2 podcasts ago, I think.
When we were talking about women.
Yeah.
Well, she's
spunky women.
Except she's not a spunky. She didn't get to be a spunky old broad.
Right, which is why I eliminated her and probably why you did.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I looked at her earlier when I was just looking at female criminals.
Yeah.
So this is, and I apologize because there are a lot of Indian words in here that I am not going to pronounce correctly. I mean, I try, but I'm not going to. I'm going to fail miserably. Her name was Phulan Devi. Devi. And she is known as the Bandit Queen. It's really funny because when you look at Wikipedia, it says she was an Indian female rights activist, bandit, and politician from the Samajwadi Party, who later served as a member of parliament. And that sentence right there just glosses over so fucking much of what she was. So she was my age. She was born in August of 1963 and died in July of 2001. Okay. So she was not very old at all when she died. When she was murdered. So I am going to say...
Spoiler!
I am going to say up front that if you are interested in learning more about her, there are tons of biographies and articles written about her. There is also one that she basically dictated, even though she was illiterate. Oh. With the help of 2 international authors who, for some reason, I chose not to write their names down.
Good job.
Yeah. So there's so much information out there. This is just, consider this the highlights reel. It's not, because I could not possibly go into all the intricate interplay of personal relationships and power struggles, and it just, and she was a very important person, though. She did a lot. So she was born into the Malla caste, which is Mallah. So these are traditionally boatmen and fishermen. So it's not a super low caste, but neither is it a high caste. Because it's not land owning, it's, not anything like that.
And it's labor.
It's labor.
Yeah.
So in a small village called, I'm going to butcher this, Gura Ka Purwa, in the Jalan district of Uttar Pradesh. That one had a pronunciation guide.
Oh, nice.
I could hear it. Uttar Pradesh. It's in north central India, so there's kind of a saddle at the top of India. It's kind of right in the middle.
All right.
If you can picture, I could not. I had to look it up, but it always has been and still is it's a very poor place. It's very arid. They don't have any industry. So anybody who is able to leaves for the larger cities to find work.
So she was a boat cast, so there must be rivers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the ones who don't go to cities, a lot of them form gangs of bandits who prey on the neighbors or travelers or surrounding towns. And I'm like, it's just commonplace. Well, I don't feel like going to the city, so I'm going to become a bandit.
I'm going to be a bandit.
They go in these big ravines around the town and become bandits. And that's where they hide out, in the ravines. I need more photos.
So of note, do not go near ravines.
No. There were 4 children in her family, but only she and 1 sister survived to adulthood. The family was extremely poor. They had 1 acre of land that had a very large, very old neem tree on it. And that's Neem. There are a lot of uses. I looked this up. There's so many uses for a neem tree. There's neem seed oil, and it's a very bitter green. You can eat parts of it. So anyway, it was an older tree, but it wasn't producing very much anymore of whatever piece of it you wanted to use. So when the paternal grandparents died, their eldest son, who was her uncle, Phulan's uncle, became head of the family. And her cousin decided he wanted to cut down the tree to have more arable land because the tree was no longer productive. So, okay, you can kind of see that point. She did not want that tree cut down. She thought her relatives were taking advantage of her father and her family because there were no sons.
Yeah, makes sense.
So she took on her much older cousin. She berated him in public, called him names, called him a thief, taunted him, and verbally abused him in public.
That's ballsy.
Yeah, because she was like 10, 11.
Wow.
Doing this. She reputedly had a very foul mouth.
I'm just thinking of the stories that I've heard of in that sort of situation. I mean, where she would be punished for something.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's coming.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was said that she had a very foul mouth. And I thought, well, yes, many women who stand up for themselves are accused of having a very foul mouth. So I'm like, okay, did she really? Or did she just use...
I hope she did.
Or was she just using the same salty language that everybody else was using, but she just didn't hold back? She attacked him physically once.
Wow.
I know, right?
Just picturing a skinny little
yes.
girl.
So when they were going to cut down the tree, she gathered other girls from the village and staged a sit-in around the tree. And the family elders could not drag them. They tried to physically remove them, couldn't drag them away. She was eventually beaten unconscious with a brick.
There it is.
Yep, we knew that was coming.
Yeah.
So a few months later, at age 11, her family arranged her marriage to a man thrice her age.
Yeah.
Who lived quite a while. One thing said several hundred miles away, and another just said it was a distant village. So I don't know how far it really was. He beat her. He sexually abused her. And she tried to run away several times and was eventually returned to her family in disgrace. And at one point, I found the detail that when they arranged the marriage, they gave her to this man, and he gave her family a cow and a bicycle.
Wow.
It was the bicycle that threw me. The cow I get, the bicycle, I was like, huh.
Maybe it was a very nice bicycle.
So yeah, she was returned to her family in disgrace. Her cousin, okay, remember her cousin?
Oh, yeah.
A real prince of a guy.
Yeah.
Went to the police and reported her for theft, petty theft, saying that she had stolen a gold ring and a wristwatch from him. The police, because this was local police, they knew the whole family. They knew her family and they knew his family. So they did what he asked.
Yeah.
They locked her up for 3 days and beat her and abused her, then released her and told her she had better live quietly and try to get along with her family. There was no try. You need to live quietly and get along with your family.
That's an excellent way to create a female bandit.
Yeah. I'm like, who wouldn't listen to that advice? So after this, so now she's 16 and she is of legal age to cohabitate with him. Because apparently you can be married to someone and you don't have to sleep with them. Although, I don't know. Obviously, since he was sexually abusing her, he didn't care that she was 11. But at 16, it said she was old enough to legally cohabitate with him. So her family wanted to return her to her husband. They had to bribe the in-laws with expensive gifts before they would take her back, but they eventually did. For a bit. In a few months... I kept reading this going, no, really? In a few months, the in-laws sent back Fulan. They sent back the gifts, and they sent back a message saying under no circumstances would they ever take her back again.
Wow.
So being abandoned by your husband was taboo.
Yeah.
And it shamed her. So this is 1979. She is a teenage outcast because her husband has abandoned her. At one point, she went to live with her sister, but she seemed to fall into an illicit affair with a distant and married cousin. So they ran off together, but he came back home to his wife. So, it isn't known exactly how she fell in with the gang of bandits to begin with. So they're like, did she walk away from her life and go willingly? Or did they recruit her? Did they kidnap her? And then she herself said it was fate. She just glossed over it and said it was fate that I wound up with them. Another version says that her uncle, again, prince of a man, paid the bandits to kidnap her.
He's great.
Yeah. So the gang leader raped and brutalized her for 3 days. Because, why not? She was saved by a man named Vikram Singh, who was kind of the second in command. Vikram and she were of the same caste, the Mala caste. He was also second in command in the gang. So there was a fight, and Vikram killed the gang leader and assumed control of the gang. And so, despite the fact that each of them already had a spouse, because he was also married, but apparently you don't take your wife to live in the ravine.
I mean, some may.
Well, so they began living together, which caused problems on several different levels. So not long after that, they raided the village where her husband lived, the husband who sent her home. They dragged him from his home, and she stabbed him in front of all the villagers, and they left him for dead. He did survive. They left him for dead with a note attached to him warning against old men marrying young girls.
Oh, well, that hasn't been very effective, but good for them anyway.
Yeah. So he survived, although scarred. But here's the interesting thing. Because he was not divorced, he was never able to marry again. And the other villagers shunned him because they were afraid of the gang.
Oh.
Yeah. Don't you just feel sorry for him?
Nope. Just desserts. Karma.
It's like,
call it what you will.
Yeah. See what happens when you abuse 11-year-old girls? They grow up.
Don't people know you don't mess with preteen girls yet?
No, they don't. So, she was the only female member of the gang. She learned to use a rifle. She was a full participant. They would, they would attack passing travelers. They would go to neighboring villages. It is said that they tried to go up, punch up. So they tried to attack people who were wealthier than they were, as opposed to picking on people who were poorer than they were. So there were these two brothers, the Ram brothers, that were released from jail and returned to the gang. They had been original members, but when all this happened, they were in jail. They were furious because they were big buddies with the leader. And so, of course, they blamed Fulan, calling her a divisive wanton. Like, I would, so.
Okay.
I'm like, as names go, that's, she responded in her typical foul-mouthed style. One of the brothers grabbed her by the scruff of the neck, like grabbed her with one hand and slapped her with the other.
Jeez.
And it said a scuffle ensued. I'm like, a scuffle?
Because she doesn't take anybody's shit.
She does not take any shit. So, while they were fighting, after the fight, she accused him of fondling her breasts during the fracas. So, Vikram publicly, in front of the rest of the gang, berated the brothers and made them apologize to her.
I kind of like Vikram.
Yes, he's been called the love of her life.
Okay.
These two brothers, the Ram brothers, are also furious because the previous leader and they were from the Rajput caste, which is a wealthier land-owning caste. And now the leader is of a lower caste, and they didn't like that.
Oh,
Vikram.
No, they would not like that. However, why are you a bandit if you're in these higher castes? It seems strange.
I can't answer that. That would be. I would have to go back to school to study the history of India, and I'm not going to do that.
And the caste system.
And the caste system. I don't think you can learn that in a few days of scanning Wikipedia articles.
Well, okay, that's fair.
I just think it seems to be very complex and have a lot more subtleties and complexities than I'm aware of.
Does, yes.
So,
and there are people still fighting to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we? Okay, so. Oh, here we go. I'm like, wait, where was I? So what happens is, because so much of this is caste-based, when they started raiding, the Ram brothers would make it a point to attack and abuse others of the Mala caste, while also inviting more Rajput to join the gang. So they eventually became the majority. And so Vikram, brilliant, beautiful Vikram, suggests, let's break it into two gangs. we're getting too big. Why don't we have, you guys can have the Rajput gang and we will have the Malla gang. And for some reason, this was met with a lot of resistance from the gang members because they had always, these two castes had been working together in the gang and they wanted to keep it that way.
Okay. Well, then don't try and take it over.
I think there must have been something else going on, but I haven't been able to suss out exactly what it was. But even the other Mallas did not like Fulan because she was very sharp-tongued.
She was a ballsy girl with bad language.
She was. That doesn't sound like anyone we know.
No.
And some of them had ties or may have been related to Vikram's legal wife back home. And there was also a lot of jealousy. Why does this guy get to have his girlfriend living with us? And nobody else does.
Wee.
I mean,
big whiny bandits.
It's like, it's like, well, does your girlfriend know how to shoot a gun, and is she willing to attack people for money?
Has she stabbed people and left notes?
Right. Which she couldn't have written if she was illiterate, but she did the stabbing. That was the important part. So there was finally, it boiled over into a physical altercation, and Vikram and Fulan escaped into the night, but they were tracked, and Vikram was shot down. He was shot and killed. I know. So Fulan was taken to the village of Bimay, I'm guessing, where the Ram brothers were from. They held her for 3 weeks. She was beaten, raped, and humiliated.
Haven't they learned yet that doesn't work on her?
Apparently,
it just makes her mad.
Yeah, apparently they're really slow. The final straw was they paraded her around the village naked. Mm-hmm. So then a low caste villager and 2 Malla members from the original gang, including Man Singh, helped her escape. Yep. So she and Man Singh become lovers and leaders of a Malla-only gang, and they generally, this was when they really focused on targeting the higher caste towns. So punching up instead of punching down. So when I start putting dates in, we're in trouble. If I'm like, wait, when did this happen? So, this is what she's really famous for. On February 14th, 1981. Okay, I'm going to throw you a bit of contrast. In February of 1981, I was a senior in high school. I was probably thinking about prom. I was probably worried about what college I was going to.
Would you like me to throw in?
No,
I was
you
4 years old.
But she and I are the same age.
Okay.
So I'm worried about prom and college. And what did she do? She led the gang back to Bamay, arriving during a wedding celebration. Mm. They were dressed as police officers. So they called for the Ram brothers, who mysteriously could not be found. Nobody knew where they were. So they rounded up 30 young men, marched them to the river, made them kneel, and shot them. Mm. Now, they rounded up 30, only 22 died.
Bad shot.
So, and this exploded in the news in India. This was fucking huge. As you could well imagine. I mean, it would be. It sparked outrage across the country. The chief minister of the Uttar Pradesh area resigned. There was a massive manhunt. They couldn't find her. This was when Robin Hood rumors started springing up. That not only were they robbing people who were well-to-do, but she was supporting the poor people. Now, the police maintain that there's no evidence that she ever did anything like that, paying it back to the poor. But this is when she got the title, the Bandit Queen.
Fun.
Yes. So in February of 1983, so it took 2 years for them and they still couldn't find her. They did not track her down. She contacted the police. She agreed to surrender to the authorities. However, she said she didn't trust the Uttar Pradesh police and insisted she would only surrender to the Madhya Pradesh police. And she also insisted that she would lay down her arms only before the pictures of Mahatma Gandhi and the Hindu goddess Durga, not the police. She also had some conditions. And she had been, apparently, and I didn't know if this was true or not, after they had a successful raid, she would go to the temple of Durga and leave offerings.
Okay.
To Durga. So anyway, her 4 conditions: a promise that the death penalty would not be imposed on any members of her gang who surrendered. The term for the other members of the gang should not exceed 8 years. That's just such an odd figure to me. Why you got to pick that, I don't know. But a plot of land would be given to her. All right. And her entire family should be escorted by the police to witness her surrender ceremony. And it sounds like it was. It was a ceremony. So an unarmed police chief met her at a rendezvous in the Chambal ravines. They met all of her requirements. The onlookers included a crowd of about 10,000 people to see her turn herself in. That's how big of a deal she was.
Wow.
So
also makes it so they can't
yes
do something dirty, at least not right then.
At least not right then. So and yes, other members of her gang did surrender when she did. She was charged with approximately somewhere in the neighborhood of 48 crimes. But her trial was delayed for 11 years. So this is where you understand that the criminal justice system in other countries bear no resemblance to what we have here.
Yeah, because you have a right to a speedy trial.
She was incarcerated that entire time.
Uh-huh.
She was in prison that entire time. And as a matter of fact, she was ill. She underwent surgery and had a hysterectomy while she was in jail, while she was incarcerated. In 1994... the charges were dropped and she was released on parole.
She'd already served 11 freaking years.
Yes, I know. But again, shocked the nation that she was, that I don't think they were looking at it as, well, she did serve 11 years. They were looking at it as all the charges were dropped. So, yes, especially if you were related to any of the young men she killed in that village. So in 1995, she married Ahmed Singh, and they both embraced Buddhism. In 1995, someone invited her to a conference, and it was about women and keeping women out of pornography and societal ills and how to protect women. In 1996, this is 2 years after she's released from prison, she ran for and won election as a member of parliament. So she served from 96 to 98, lost her seat in 98, was reelected in 1999, and was still serving when she was assassinated in 2001. She was the first low-caste woman to become a member of parliament.
Wow.
On the afternoon of July 26 of 2001, she was gunned down outside of her bungalow. State-owned. It was something you get. It was a perk for being a member of parliament. She was hit 9 times and was dead before she arrived at the hospital. Her bodyguard was also shot, but he survived.
Well, that's not a good bodyguard.
Right? Why were you not jumping in front of her? A man named Sher Singh Rana was tried and convicted and said that what he did was in retaliation for when the young men were gunned down in the village where she'd been held. 10 other people were accused of having part in this, but they were all acquitted. The guns that were involved, there was this really complicated thing about the guns and who picked up the guns and who had the guns and where did the guns go, but they mysteriously were lost before the police could perform any forensic tests.
Well, that sounds American.
So when the police said there's no evidence that she actually gave to the poor, I'm like, yeah, can we trust your word on that? I do not know. So yeah, she came from absolute nothing. I mean, she really, and she made bad choices. I mean, I think we can agree she made some bad choices. Not all of them were her choice. A lot of what happened to her was
she had honor.
Yeah, she had absolutely no control over. But after serving in prison, when she came out, she was respected and beloved as a, as this member of parliament, and she was a real symbol to other women. Now, I will say there was a movie made in 1994 called Bandit Queen. It was made in India. And I would say if you are interested in her story, do not watch this movie because she hated this movie. It was it took a lot of license with what happened to her. Her objection to the movie was that it made her look like a victim. Like she never, like all she did was weep and have events thrust upon her. That she never steered her own path. You know the Indian author Arundhati Roy? Have you ever heard the name?
No.
Famous. She also wrote just a blistering piece about the movie because it's like you can't take the story of this woman's rape, change it to suit yourself, and then portray it. But here's what I like. Here's the note I'm going to end on. This woman threatened, Fulan threatened to immolate herself outside a theater if they didn't withdraw the movie. Outside a theater where it was showing. Threatened to set her own ass on fire if they did not pull the movie, which they eventually did.
Oh, good.
I'm like, really?
She was an impressive person.
If she says she's going to do that, she's going to do that.
Yeah, I think so with her. It probably wasn't history. An idle threat.
Yeah, no. I did not get that impression. It was not an idle threat. So
I'm glad one of us did the story of her ultimately.
Yes, I do want to get the book. I do want to get her biography and read it. I mean, several have been written, but I want the one that she had the input into and hear what she had to say.
We should totally share that book on the Facebook page.
We should.
Yeah.
And there are pictures. I will try to remember to post pictures of her. There's a picture of her and Vikram. Oh, they're so young. They're so young. But I mean, she was like 16, 17 years old, and
it's always astonishing. I mean, even if you go back in the history here, and you hear about 10-year-old drummer boys in the Civil War, for example, and stuff like that. How different the expectations of young people were way back when and now, and you go to where some of us anyway, like there's coddling, there's overprotection, and
helicopter parents.
Yeah. And it's just interesting what makes more functional human being who can take care of themselves. It's probably somewhere in between.
I was going to say, I hope there's a balance somewhere in between there.
Yes.
But, that was just, and that was what really struck me was when I read when she was born, I'm like, we're of an age. And I'm like, she was kicking ass and taking names.
You were at prom.
I was at prom. Probably doing things I shouldn't have been. I'll just leave that.
Just leave it right there. Yeah. I was doing things I shouldn't have been, but I was 4.
But it probably involved picking your nose.
Probably. Actually, yeah. I don't think I cut my friend's hair until I was like 6. Because remember, we still lived in our apartment complex.
So we are hoping that if you have a story of something that's interesting, like a UFO or a ghost story or a family story, whether it be funny or tragic or just interesting, that you'll share it with us.
Yeah, you can email it to us at mysteriesmonstersmayhem@gmail.com. You can put it through the form, which Kim did. She used the form on the website, so now I know it works.
Yay,
I set that sucker up, and so that made me happy too. And the website is mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com. And we, of course, have a Facebook page, Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem, that you can look up where we post little extra things, photos, links, references, sources.
Yeah.
All that good stuff. Did you say your sources at the beginning?
I did not. It was mostly off of 800,000 Wikipedia pages. With a couple other because I'd see something and not know what it was, and I'd have to go look it up.
Yeah.
And that is one good, I hear I'm going to plug Wikipedia. A lot of times they have the highlighted words, and you can hover over it, and it gives you the little brief definition.
Yeah.
Or then you can click on it and go get the full article. And so that just was, oh my God. It's just so much. And I feel like this really is the Cliff Notes. It's the broad strokes.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind reading that biography either.
I'll have to see if I can find it.
Yeah.
So
since I didn't pit myself, and I should really get better about it, if you want to read any of my books, you can go to thewarriormuse.com to find me. And other than that,
stay safe and be well and be happy and find something to laugh about.
And please like and follow us wherever you can so that we get bumped up, get more people to send us stories and all that good stuff. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.